A cry for help. Staff Sergeant Kira Novak squinted at her display as the alien distress beacon pulsed weakly amidst the electromagnetic interference. Her recon squad had been surveying this uncharted world for potential threats when the signal grabbed their attention. Novak to base, with picking up an SOS from a species not in our databases. Signal origin is 3 clicks northwest of our position. Please advise, over. There was a crackle of static then. Base to Novak, your call on whether to investigate, but proceed with extreme caution. Backup is an hour out if needed. Over. Kira switched to the squad channel. Okay folks, prep for contact. Keep it non-lethal unless I say otherwise. Zoe, you're on scanner. I want threat assessments on anything that moves. Finn, cover R6. Rest of you, diamond formation on me. Let's move. The jungle fought them for every step, but their powered exosuits let them push through with mechanical ease. The terrain that would snare others was a minor hindrance to their enhanced capabilities. As they neared the source of the distress call, a series of fast-moving blips appeared on their scanners, heading directly toward the signal origin. I've got multiple hostiles converging on the SOS, Zoe reported, her voice tight. Profiles suggest predators, large and fast ones. If I had to guess, our mystery caller is about to be on the menu. Double time, people, weapons hot, but watch your fire. We're here to save lives, not add to the body count, Kira ordered. A scream, high and terrified, echoed from ahead, followed by a series of guttural roars and the crash of something large through the undergrowth. The squad broke into a run. They burst into a small clearing and chaos reigned. A dozen beast-like creatures, all tooth and claw and sinew, circled a fallen tree where 2 small figures huddled in terror. The creatures were shaped by evolution into perfect hunting machines, but Kira's team had been forged in the fires of conflicts on a dozen worlds. They were humanity's sword and shield. Light 'em up. Kira barked, and the jungle erupted with the crack of pulse rifles. The air hummed and creatures howled as precisely aimed bolts of condensed plasma struck flesh and bone. It was over in heartbeats. In the sudden silence, Kira approached the fallen tree, rifle lowered but ready. 2 sets of frightened eyes peered out at her from the shadows. We're here to help, she said gently, extending a hand in a universal gesture of aid. And after a long moment, a delicate, taloned hand reached back, accepting the offer of salvation. Thus began a most unlikely alliance, one that would echo across the stars. Sanctuary. The alien mother, who Kira learned was named Xyloth, cradled her child Ixel close as the human shuttlecraft lifted off. Her eyes, a vibrant purple that seemed to shimmer with emotion, met Kira's with a mix of gratitude and trepidation. You're safe now, Kira assured her, though the words felt hollow. She'd seen the scars, both physical and mental, that marred the aliens' delicate frames. Whatever horrors they had endured, safe was a relative term. Zoe, the squad's medic, ran scans as they flew. They're malnourished and exhausted, but I'm not seeing any critical injuries. Some rest and nutrients should help stabilize them. Kira nodded, but her mind was already racing ahead. Protocols for first contact situations were extensive, but this felt different. They weren't dealing with a thriving civilization reaching out to the stars, but refugees fleeing from some unmeasured threat. As if sensing her thoughts, Xyloth spoke, her words translated by the ship's AI into a soft, melodic voice. The Krodax came without warning, without mercy. They saw my people, the Kelthari, as lesser beings, fit only to serve or be destroyed. We fought, but we were no match for their weapons, their savagery. A shudder ran through the alien's slight frame, and Ixel whimpered. Xyloth held him tighter, her eyes haunted. Kira felt a surge of anger and sympathy. Humanity had fought hard to find its place among the stars, and the idea of a species subjugating another stirred old ghosts. You're not alone anymore, Kira said firmly, reaching out to lay a comforting hand on Xyloth's arm. Humans look out for each other, and now that includes you and your son. We'll find a way to keep you safe. Xyloth blinked in surprise at the contact but didn't pull away. Instead, after a moment, she placed her own hand over Kira's in a gesture of trust. Your kindness, it means more than you can know. My people have a saying, in the darkest night, even the smallest light can guide you home. Perhaps your people are that light for us. As the shuttle docked with the orbiting human base, Kira couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The Kelethori's plight had stirred something in her, and she knew her squad felt the same. They were soldiers, trained to fight and defend, and now they had someone to fight for. The light Xyloth spoke of would be a beacon, a call to arms. If the Krodax or any other threat thought the Kelethori easy prey, they would learn the folly of underestimating human resolve. In the face of injustice, humanity would not stand idly by. They would stand together, human and Kelethori alike, and pity any fool who tried to stand against them. The gathering storm. The command center of the human base was a hive of activity. News of the Krodax invasion fleet had spread like wildfire, and the responses were as varied as they were intense. Some called for diplomacy, for finding a peaceful resolution. Others demanded immediate retaliation, a show of force to deter Krodax aggression. And then there were those like Kira, who saw the need for action but understood that charging headlong into a war with so many unknowns was a recipe for disaster. We need intel, Kira argued, her voice cutting through the chatter. We're flying blind here. Before we can make any kind of move, we need to know what we're up against. Major Thorne, the base commander, nodded slowly. Sergeant Novak is right. We can't afford to underestimate this threat. I want eyes and ears on the Krodax, fleet composition, weaponry, battle tactics, the works. If they sneeze, I want to know about it. He turned to Kira. Novak, your squad is my go-to for this. You've got experience with the Kelethori and a knack for getting results in the field. Gather what you can, but don't take any unnecessary risks. We need you back in one piece. Kira saluted. Yes, sir, we'll get it done. As she turned to leave, Xyloth intercepted her, her eyes wide with concern. Kira, I must speak with you. It's about the Krodax. In a quiet corner of the base, Xyloth recounted the true extent of Krodax cruelty. They didn't just attack us, she whispered, her voice trembling. They made a sport of it. Hunting parties would stalk our cities, killing indiscriminately. They saw us as lesser beings, unworthy of even basic compassion. Kira's jaw clenched, a cold fury building in her chest. Why? What could possibly drive them to such brutality? Xyloth shook her head. I don't know. But I do know that they won't stop with the Kelethori. Your people, the humans, you're strong, resilient. The Krodax will see that as a challenge. They'll come for you, just as they came for us. The implications hung heavy in the air. This was bigger than just protecting the Kelethori refugees. This was about the survival of both their species. Kira placed a hand on Xyloth's shoulder, her grip firm and reassuring. They can try, she said, her voice steely. But we're not going down without a fight. If the Krodax want a war, we'll give them one they won't forget. The die was cast. As Kira gathered her squad to begin their mission, she knew that the coming storm would test them all. But she also knew that when the dust settled, the Krodax would learn the true meaning of human determination. They wanted a fight. Humanity would bring the war. Unlikely alliances. Kira stood before the assembled human and Kelethori leadership, her stance resolute. We can't do this alone, she said, her voice carrying across the room. Neither of us can, but together we stand a chance. She gestured to the holographic display, which showed a detailed breakdown of Krodax military might. My team has gathered extensive intel on the Krodax. They're strong, their technology is advanced, and they outnumber us, but they're not invincible. Xyloth stepped forward, her presence lending weight to Kira's words. The sergeant is right. My people have knowledge of Krodax tactics, weaknesses in their defenses. Combine that with human ingenuity and strength, it could be the key to our survival. There were murmurs from both sides, a mix of skepticism and tentative hope. Kira pressed on. Look, I know this isn't easy. Trust has to be earned, and we're all fighting our own battles. But this is bigger than any one of us. The Krodax won't stop with the Kelathari or the humans. They'll consume everything in their path unless we stand in their way. She paused, letting her words sink in. I'm not asking for a miracle. I'm asking for a chance. A chance to prove that we're stronger together than we ever could be apart. In the end, it was Major Thorn who broke the silence. Sergeant Novak has never led us astray. If she believes this alliance is our best hope, then I'm inclined to trust that judgment. I say we give it a shot. Slowly, others began to nod, human and Kelathari alike. It was a fragile agreement, born of desperation and necessity, but it was a start. In the days that followed, Kira and Zoloth worked tirelessly to bridge the gap between their peoples. They pored over strategy, dissected Krodax weaknesses, and brainstormed ways to counter their advanced weaponry. Human engineers and Kelathari scientists found common ground, their combined knowledge spawning innovations at a breathtaking pace. New alloys to strengthen armor, refined targeting systems to exploit Krodax vulnerabilities, even hybrid fighters that blended the best of both species' designs. It was a testament to the power of unity, of what could be achieved when differences were set aside in the face of a common threat. But even as hope began to take root, the specter of the Krodax invasion loomed ever closer. The true test was yet to come, and it would be on the battlefield that the strength of this unlikely alliance would be forged. Kira looked out over the bustling base, humans and Kelathari working side by side, and felt a swell of pride. They were standing on the precipice of history, and come what may, they would face it together. The Krodax wanted a war. Well, now they had one, and it was a war they were going to lose. The line in the sand. The first wave hit without warning. One moment, the skies above the human colony on Theta 6 were clear. The next, they swarmed with Krodax fighters, their hulls glinting menacingly in the pale light of the planet's twin moons. On the ground, alarms blared as defense systems whirred to life. Soldiers, human and Kelathari alike, scrambled to their posts. They had drilled for this moment, planned and strategized, but the reality was so much more visceral than any simulation. Kira stood at the front line, her rifle primed. Beside her, Zoloth gripped a Kelathari energy lance, her delicate features hardened with determination. They shared a nod, a silent acknowledgement of the bond they had forged. Here, on this battlefield, they were more than allies, they were family. The Krodax came like a tidal wave, all thundering engines and screeching metal. Their weapons sung a song of destruction, raining fire and fury upon the colony's defenses. But those defenses held. Shielding, fortified by Kelathari crystalline technology, absorbed the brunt of the barrage. Human gun emplacements roared in response, their targeting enhanced by Kelathari predictive algorithms. Turning the tide. In the chaos of battle, it was hard to tell where the tide turned. Perhaps it was when Sergeant Kira Novak led a daring infiltration of a Krodax command ship, her small team striking at the heart of the enemy's coordination. Or maybe it was when Zoloth rallied a joint force of human and Kelathari fighters to defend a critical supply line, their combined tactics leaving Krodax forces in disarray. But turn it did. Slowly, painfully, the momentum began to shift. The Krodax, for all their might and savagery, found themselves facing an enemy unlike any they had encountered before. The humans fought with a tenacity that defied logic, their resolve only seeming to strengthen in the face of adversity. They adapted to Krodax strategies with startling speed, countering each new threat with ingenuity and sheer determination. And the Kelathari, once dismissed as weak and inferior, proved to be a wellspring of intel and innovation. Their knowledge of Krodax technology allowed for swift countermeasures, turning the enemy's own advancements against them. Together, they were a force to be reckoned with, united not by biology or culture, but by a shared sense of purpose, a common enemy, and an unyielding refusal to submit. On the bridge of her flagship, Krodak's Admiral Zoval snarled at the tactical display. The humans and their Kelethari pets were proving far more troublesome than anticipated. Each victory seemed to cost more than the last, each advance met with fiercer resistance. And then came the unthinkable. A joint human and Kelethari strike team, led by none other than Sergeant Novak and Zoloth, breached the flagship's defenses. They fought their way to the ship's central power core and, in a move that would be recounted in tactical textbooks for generations, destroyed it. The resulting chain reaction tore through the Krodak's fleet like wildfire. Ships went dark, their systems failing as the power core's destruction sent out a crippling electromagnetic pulse. In an instant, the tide had turned. The invaders found themselves crippled, their coordination shattered, their mighty war machine ground to a halt by a single daring strike. As the Krodak's fleet reeled, the Ally forces pressed their advantage. Human battleships surged forward, their weapons cutting through the enemy's weakened defenses. Kelethari strike craft darted through the chaos, picking off stragglers and sowing further disarray. It was a turning point, a moment when the impossible became reality. The Krodaks, thought unstoppable, were being pushed back. Their aura of invincibility shattered by the combined might of two species they had dared to underestimate. But even as the celebrations began and talk turned to a possible endgame, those who had been in the thick of it knew the truth. This was a respite, not a resolution. The Krodaks were wounded, but not defeated. They would regroup, rearm, and return with a vengeance. The war was far from over, but for the first time, victory seemed within reach. The alliance had been tested, and it had emerged stronger than ever. Whatever came next, they would face it as they had faced everything thus far, together. The counterstrike. The Krodak's homeworld was a fortress, a planet-sized monument to their culture of conquest and domination. Its skies swarmed with defense platforms, its surface bristled with gun emplacements and shielded bunkers. It was a world built for war and the heart of the Krodak's war machine. And it was here that the Alliance would strike their decisive blow. The plan was audacious in its scope and daring in its execution. A joint human and Kelethari fleet, the largest ever assembled, would launch a multi-pronged assault on the Krodak's defenses. Their objective, to create a breach through which a strike team could land and disable the planet's central command nexus. If successful, it would cripple the Krodak's ability to coordinate their forces and respond to threats. It could effectively end the war. But the risks were enormous. The Krodak's homeworld was the most heavily defended location in known space. Any attack would face the full might of their military, and the likelihood of heavy casualties was all but certain. For Sergeant Kira Novak, leading the ground assault, these were more than just statistics. Each potential loss was a friend, a comrade, a brother or sister in arms. The weight of command had never felt heavier. But as she looked out over the assembled strike force, a mix of human and Kelethari volunteers, each one ready to lay down their life for the cause, she knew there was no other choice. This was their chance to end the Krodak's threat, to ensure a future for both their species. They had to take it. The assault began with a barrage of long-range weaponry, human and Kelethari ships, working in tandem to keep the Krodak's defenses engaged. Under this cover, Kira's team made planetfall, their drop pods screaming through the atmosphere like meteors. The ground battle was chaos incarnate. The Krodak's defenders were everywhere, their weaponry advanced and their tactics ruthless. But the strike team's diversity was their strength. Human resilience and adaptability combined with Kelethari agility and precision to create a fighting force the likes of which the Krodaks had never encountered. They pushed forward, inch by blood-soaked inch, toward their target. Losses mounted on both sides, the ground beneath their feet growing slick with blood and churned by explosions, but they did not falter. In the eye of this storm stood Kira and Zoloth, two unlikely warriors from worlds apart, now bound by a friendship forged in the crucible of war. They fought as one, each protecting the other, each driving the other forward. It was Xyloth who spotted the breach in the Krodax defenses, a small gap in their overlapping fields of fire, and it was Kira who led the charge, rallying the remaining troops for a final desperate push. They struck like lightning, fast and precise, the suddenness of their assault catching the Krodax off guard. They poured through the breach, fighting their way into the heart of the command nexus, until at last they stood before the central control hub. With a nod and a shared look of understanding, Kira and Xyloth stepped forward. Together, they initiated the shutdown sequence. And across the planet, Krodax defenses faltered and fell, their coordination lost, their resistance crumbling. It was an end, but also a beginning. The war was not over, not yet. But the path to victory, once so murky and uncertain, now shone with the light of hope. The Alliance had struck a blow that would resound through history, and the Krodax would never recover. The story of this day, of this partnership between human and Kelethari, would be told and retold for generations. A testament to the power of unity, of the strength that can be found in difference, and of the unbreakable spirit of those who fight for what is right. A new era. The surrender, when it came, was almost anticlimactic. After the devastating blow dealt by the Alliance's assault on their homeworld, the Krodax leadership saw the writing on the wall. Their military was in disarray, their defenses shattered, their aura of invincibility forever tarnished. They had underestimated the humans, and the Kelethari had foolishly believed that might alone could ensure victory. And in that hubris, they had sown the seeds of their own downfall. The formal ceremony was a somber affair, the Krodax delegates stiff and stone-faced as they signed the treaty that would end the conflict and redefine the galactic order. But for Sergeant Kira Novak and her Kelethari friend Xyloth, standing among the assembled dignitaries, it was a moment of profound emotion. They had fought for this, bled for it. They had watched friends and comrades lay down their lives for the chance at peace. And now, as the ink dried on the treaty and a new era dawned, they could scarcely believe it was real. In the days and weeks that followed, the true scope of what they had achieved began to sink in. The alliance between humans and Kelethari, forged in the heat of battle, now turned its attention to the tasks of rebuilding and growth. Trade routes were established, cultural exchanges initiated. Human scientists marveled at Kelethari biotechnology, while Kelethari engineers eagerly studied human propulsion systems. The two species, so different in form and history, found common ground in their shared values of curiosity, resilience, and determination. And at the heart of it all were Kira and Xyloth, the human soldier and the Kelethari diplomat, the unlikely pair who had started as rescuer and refugee and become the symbol of a new era of cooperation. They were not alone in this. Across both species, stories emerged of friendships forged, of lives saved and sacrifices honored. Each one a thread in the tapestry of this new alliance, each one a reminder of what had been achieved and what was now possible. There would be challenges, of course, wounds to heal, prejudices to overcome. The scars of war ran deep, and trust, once broken, was not easily mended. But as Kira looked out over the bustling spaceport, watching humans and Kelethari walk and work side by side, she knew they would face these challenges as they had faced everything else. Together. The Krodax had sought to divide them, to conquer through fear and force. But in their arrogance, they had achieved the opposite. They had united two species, not just against a common enemy, but in a common vision of a better tomorrow. As Kira turned to Xyloth, seeing her own emotions reflected in those shimmering purple eyes, she knew that this was only the beginning. The future stretched out before them, filled with promise and potential, and whatever it held, they would meet it side by side. For in the end, this was the true legacy of their struggle, not just the battles won or the enemies defeated, but the bonds forged and the horizons expanded. The proof that the greatest strength came not from superiority, but from unity. The Krodax had sought to make war, but in their folly, They had birthed an alliance that would reshape the stars, and in that alliance, in that shared commitment to a brighter dawn, lay the ultimate victory. It was a new era, and it belonged to them all.